everybody, welcome to turn 1 of a new Dominions 6 series. This is actually going to be my first Dominion 6 long-form multiplayer, and it's going to be with Asphodel. Assuming that you have already watched whatever Asphodel videos that I put out in regards to, like, probably a nation overview and pretender design, cool. You know at least a little bit of what I'm planning on doing and what I think about the nation. I will probably end up doing a more robust national overview later on in the actual gameplay or at the end of the game to kind of like consolidate thoughts and see if I've come up with any new ideas or tips or tricks. But going into this, I haven't played Asphodel in many years, since very early on in the life cycle of Dom 5, so this is going to be a relatively new-ish experience for me. Asphodel was actually one of the first nations that I tried to play in Dominions 5, and as a brand new player to the Dominions franchise, that didn't go too well. Because Asphodel was not especially strong in Dominions 5, and the mechanics for it can be very daunting for new players. So, as a caveat, or a segue from that, I haven't actually done a lot with Asphodel single player in Dominion 6 either. I have noodled around with them a little bit just for testing, but mostly I just wanted to give them a try because they're a nation that I think is very neat and thematic, and I really wanted to see how they have been adjusted in Dominion 6 and go from there. The downside of this is that this is a higher skill game, probably, than I'm used to. There's some pretty good players in this. This is a content creator long form game, so there are a lot of people in this game that create content. I think the vast majority of the players do. There might be like one or two that do not. Links to their channels and potentially playlists of this game are going to be down below in the description if that's something that interests you. It's definitely something that interests me. I'm very excited to see what comes out of this game. But yeah, for now, let's just go ahead and jump into this and see what we get. I will say, as with most of my recordings, I'm not recording these live. I'm recording them after the fact, so each of these turns, I will already know what has happened, but we'll still go through everything, and we'll still discuss thoughts and things like that as we go through. Asphodel! Okay, so normal scenario, right? If you've already seen my Pretender design video, you already know what our Pretender is. And we'll also review the Bless here in just a second, just to go over things. So yeah, this is Asphodel, and this is our start. I actually love the Fog of War in Dominion 6, and I love scrolling out at the beginning of the game and seeing this like multi-tier with like full wraparound and being like, look at all the versions, it's like a multiple universe. It's great. Okay, so Asphodel, right off the bat, not extreme, like mixed emotions about our start. First off, we have several forests nearby, which is definitely good for us, right? We absolutely want forests. Forests are where we can grow fortresses. We have cheaper temples in forests. I think cheaper labs as well, potentially. So that's good for us. Nice to have forests. Not super happy about our cap circle. One, we have a throne immediately in our cap circle, which is not always fun to deal with. That typically means that you just don't have a part of your cap circle for the first 10 to 15 turns of the game, and that depends on what thrones there are actually in the game. We'll check thrones here in a little bit. And then there's this mountain pass right between Frosted Peaks and Asphodel. So this is normally not going to be too much of a concern for us. We have taken heat. So most of the time, mountain passes in our Dominion should be open. However, in the early game, that's the scenario where that may not be the case, right? And when I say early game, I mean very early game, the first 2 or 3 turns, right? When it's still spring, this is potentially not going to have heat on this side of the mountain pass. And for a pass to be passable, to be traversable, it has to have heat on both sides of the pass. So if we do not get a tick of our Dominion over here next turn, we're not going to be able to pass this. In subsequent turns, it's going to be more likely as we move into summer, so probably this will become a non-issue relatively quickly. But we are kind of stuck with these 3 provinces being our only real locations that we can kind of like consider at this current point in time. So that is somewhat concerning. Especially considering we would love to go immediately up towards these 3 forests and try to make sure we stake a claim there. And then obviously we're interested in these 2 forests down here. So, what are we actually going to do this turn? We're going to prophetize our Minotaur Lord, renamed Homemade Sweets. I don't remember why I renamed him Homemade Sweets. I think I was watching something or Casey was watching something. And I just heard the term Homemade Sweets, and I was like, yeah, that'll be our prophet. There we go. So Homemade Sweets is going to lead us to hopeful victory. And then the other thing that I think is really cool about Asphodel is that most nations start with a commander and a scout. Asphodel starts with a commander and a Carrion centaur. So this is actually a priest. Can bless your sacreds out of the gate. So if you don't want to prophetize your Minotaur out of the gate, you can just use this Carrion Centaur to bless your individuals. The other thing is as with all undead priests for Asphodel, they are reanimator priests. So with reanimator priests and Asphodel, you reanimate mannequins. So we're going to be able to reanimate 3 mannequins per turn with this centaur, this Carrion centaur, which doesn't sound like a lot, and honestly it isn't a lot, but considering our Dominion is going to be generating mannequins as well, this can turn into, if we get 6 or 7 in our cap next turn, then suddenly that's 9 or 10 off of the back of this Carrion centaur. And that can really help to pad out some of your expansion forces to make sure that you're not losing more valuable units like what we're actually recruiting this turn, which is as many Black Centaurs as we can get. Black Centaurs being the national sacred for Asphodel. Very much a counterpoint to the White Centaur of Pangaea or Pangaea. Almost identical in the way that they function and a lot of similar stats, I believe, across the board. I haven't actually checked the White Centaur in Dominion 6, but I remember there being Black and White Centaurs being almost the same things in Dominions 5. So these guys are pretty strong, pretty good out of the gate, and because of the bless that we took, that they are probably going to be a very big hammer for us in the early game and into the mid-game as long as things go well for us. So we'll see how that goes. Anyways, other things that we have going on, we are dropping in a Centaur Warrior as well, just for padding. Centaur Warriors, obviously inferior to the Black Centaur, but pretty damn good out of the gate. They are stealthy, they do have berserking, they do have pretty decent defense, high hit points, etc., etc. So doesn't hurt us to help pad out our squads with Centaur Warriors, so we'll see how that goes. And then we're getting a Centaur Hierophant. We're probably going to be spending the majority of our first several turns getting Centaur Hierophants. Next turn, we will probably get like a commander and a scout. But aside from that, we'll probably get a couple of Centaur Hierophants because these guys are sacred and priests, so they can lead around little groups of 5 or 6 Black Centaurs and allow us to have these very mobile, especially with forest survival, expansion parties that can hopefully expand rapidly, because we're probably going to need to expand rapidly. A small Asphodel is a dead Asphodel, I believe. So we'll see how that turns out. Fingers crossed. So that's what we're doing as far as recruitment. I don't know if we're going to be doing our normal shenaniganry with listed things. So if I do decide to do that, we're recruiting 1 Centaur Hierophant, and we're recruiting 5 Black Centaurs and 1 Centaur Warrior. So there's that. Other things to check in this first little instance of the game. I'm not going to keep this too much longer. We'll probably, next turn, we will check everyone's prophet names, and we'll go over all of the actual nations and everything like that, to actually give us something to do in turn 2. But this turn, I thought we would actually take a look at the Thrones of Ascension. So, we are doing 13 Ascension points, which means out of all these level 2 thrones, you need 7 thrones to win. And going through these thrones, this is pretty fucking good for us. As long as we can get a throne or 2, right? And we have a throne, as much as I'm annoyed by it, we have a throne right next to our capital, so that throne's as good as ours, assuming that it is not a horribly painful throne for us to take, right? But there's a lot of really good thrones in here, and really only one bad one for us. So let's take a look real quick. We got the Throne of the First Age. Ascension point spread 2, Dominion spread 3, increases magic in that province by a maximum of 2, and troops get magical resistance +1. This is really nice, but this is probably one of the midline thrones for us. Throne of the Artificer, get some stuff. Construction bonus, that's actually pretty fucking good for us. We can make use of anyone can make use of a construction bonus. We will be happy to make use of a construction bonus, because there are a lot of we're very dependent on our nature gems, and there are a lot of nature items that we would really like, but because we are so dependent on our nature gems, it's somewhat painful for us to use them on anything that aren't our national spells. So getting cheaper construction is actually a really great boon for us. So we'll see how that goes. Anyways, Crystal Throne. Again, gems. Big thing here is Crystal Mages. We already have Glamour 2 access, so that's not as big of a deal, but getting reliable Earth 2 access would be pretty nice. This is still a midline throne for us. These first 3 are kind of like midline thrones for us. And then we get into a bunch of thrones that are very potentially good for us. Throne of Fire, attack skill +3 would be phenomenal for our Black Centaurs. That would be disgustingly good. We're going to check the Bless here in a second for those of you who have not watched the Pretender design video. And then getting Fire access, Fire 3s, would be amazing, right? Iron Throne, some resources, whatever, but very specifically the Adepts of the Iron Order. Again, getting Earth 2 guaranteed would be awesome, and Astral 2 would be phenomenal. These would be great for us. The Silver Throne, 200 gold per turn, would be nice, actually. Pretty nice for us. And then Adepts of the Silver Order, Air 2, which we do not have air access, and Astral 2, which we do not have astral access, would be amazing for either one. Throne of the Earth, reinvigoration on our troops would be pretty nice. Not a massive thing, but pretty nice. And then getting gnomes, again, for the Earth 2 would be nice. The Nature 2 and the Glamour 2 we already have, so this is more of a midline one. Water would be killer, right? But spoilers, if you haven't seen the Pretender design video, we have a defense bless, right? So getting an additional 3 defense on top of what we already have would be somewhat ludicrous. It would be disgusting for our Black Centaurs, and would be very fucking difficult to deal with from a combat perspective. Getting Water 3 Hydromancers would also be pretty solid. We don't have great water. Air 2, or the Air Throne, getting Air Shield would be actually pretty cool. I have seen, or from what I've seen, ranged attacks, archery, crossbows, those types of things do seem more potent in Dominion 6 than they did in Dominions 5. So getting a built-in air shield would be pretty nice. And getting access to air mages would be very, very good for us. Throne of Knowledge, getting Lore Masters is a grab bag. Might not matter. Could be really good. Or getting Sages, very good. Pretty much regardless for us. If we were to get this throne, we would probably make Sages for the rest of eternity. So that would be pretty awesome. We get into the one throne that is not good, and that is the Throne of Misfortune. And this is fine for certain nations, but for us, this would absolutely not be what we want. We intentionally took neutral luck scales so that we had enough to pay for what we were trying to accomplish, but we weren't putting ourselves at a deficit or a potential problem in the future, right? Nerfing that for 4 astral per turn would absolutely not be something that we would want to do. It has been stuck in my head, and I'm like, it's gonna be the Throne of Misfortune. It's gonna be the Throne of Misfortune. It's gonna be the Throne of Misfortune. And I just really hope it's fucking not. And then the Outer Throne, this would be pretty nice. Magic +1 in our Dominion. We already have high magic in our Dominion, so having magic +1 in our Dominion would actually be really good, not just for the fact that obviously it's additional research, which is very nice, but the other thing is that our free spawn, the free spawn mannequins that we get, have a modifier for getting better free spawn units in higher magic locations, right? And that combines as well with in locations that are forested, and I think with the temple. Don't quote me on that one though, because I haven't looked it up. So this would actually be surprisingly good for us, and I would not be mad about having that at all. So anyways, that is pretty much it. We will, like I said, we'll check all of our enemies, our fellow players next turn when we go through all of the prophets and things like that. Right now, we're just going to get our first kind of like expansion party set up, get some Black Centaurs prepped and ready, and we're going to see where we can strike out, try to get some of these forests in the first couple turns, and hopefully have a good expansion, because if we don't, if we have a very bad expansion, I think from what I've seen, Asphodel looks like it is better, far better in Dominion 6 than it was in Dominions 5. However, I still have the feeling that if you are a small Asphodel in the beginning of the game, people are going to look at you and go, oh, that's an Asphodel with 12 provinces. Let's kill them quickly before those provinces are burned to the ground. Versus, if you are an Asphodel with 20 provinces, I think people are going to go, shit, that Asphodel's big. I want to do something about them before they burn all of that to the ground. However, I don't know if I can do anything about them right now because they're so big, right? That may backfire. That may actually be the scenario where it's like, actually, if you're smaller, people will not look at you and be like, oh, it's a small Asphodel. They're only destroying part of the world. Let's not worry about them. Versus if you're a big Asphodel, people might be like, oh, fuck, no. We do not want a sixth of the world to be 0 population. Let's kill them quickly. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We have a varied cast here in this game. So, yeah. Anyways, that is going to be the end of this first episode of Asphodel. Are we calling this? This is, I think this is the Slowest Blitz is what the game name is. So, I don't know if I'll be referring... Yeah, we'll probably refer to it. So, that is episode 1 of the Slowest Blitz. fingers crossed that this expansion goes well. Bye-bye, everybody. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. It really helps me out. If you'd like to see me live, head over to my Twitch at twitch.tv/thedistanthorizon.